If you're a healthcare professional, your English could be the difference between life and death, or it could lose patient trust. But even the most fluent medical professionals sometimes makes mistakes that impact clarity, confidence, and even career growth. Today, I'll show you 5 of the most common mistakes you might not even realize you're making, and more importantly, how to fix them immediately. Hello, everyone. I'm Devin Bruce. I'm the founder of the English Communication Academy. We help non native English speakers in healthcare communicate effectively with their patients, colleagues, and staff. And today I wanted to talk to you about something that's really, really important, but a lot of people may not realize that they're doing it. And these are just very, very common mistakes that I have seen throughout the years back when I was an English coach, and then also what I see through the academy. All right, let's get to it. Mistake number 1 is using very formal or textbook English. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people in healthcare make. They use these big, fancy $1 million educated textbook words that a lot of people just don't know. Or they talk in a way that just go over people's heads. For example, someone might say something like, I will now proceed with the examination, instead of just simply saying, let's start the exam. Or they might say something like, I shall administer your medication shortly. You could just say, I'll give you your medication soon. One of them is textbook English. One of them is real everyday working man's English. And the working man's English is what you want to strive for. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird for some of you because I know that there's a myth going around like the more educated and the more fancy you sound, the more fluent you speak. And that's not true because we don't sound like walking dictionaries. And so you actually go over people's heads when you talk like that. So patients and other people that you connect with, they don't want to talk to a textbook, you know? They want to talk to someone that they can feel connected to and that they can engage with. And when you use these big fancy words that no one really uses, it makes you come across like they can't connect with you. There is definitely a way where you can keep it professional and natural at the same time. So a good way to fix this is just simply use clear language, simple, clear language. Instead of using big fancy words, make it as simple and as clear as possible. That alone will help you so much when you're trying to connect with the people around you. All right, the second mistake is misplacing word stress. Word stress that I've discovered, especially depending on where you come from, like which country you come from, stresses are not taught. And that is a huge disservice because the way that we stress our words and the way that we use our voice directly impacts clarity. Perfect example of this. I was working with someone, this is when I was an English coach, and someone was giving a medical presentation and he kept saying hypertension when he meant hypotension. And I saw the words on his slide, but he was saying the wrong word. And so when he was done and I was giving him his feedback, I was like, which one do you mean? Hypertension or hypotension? And then when he told me, I was like, okay, you're saying the wrong word. And he couldn't believe it because he thought he was speaking clearly, but it was just the way he was articulating the stress that was causing the lack of clarity. So even something between hypertension and hypotension, that can be a big difference. So if you are not aware of how important stress is when you are trying to speak clearly, I hope this is the message. I hope you're getting it now. So a good way to fix this is literally just learn or pay attention to the natural flow of English. I had someone tell me that they really like listening to native English speakers because it sounds like singing to them, because in their native language, it's very, I'll use their words, flat and monotone, and they don't use their voice for clarity. Whereas in English, and especially American English, we use our voice for clarity. We can say the same sentence 5 different ways and have 5 different meanings. And we use our voice for that. So a good way to just, if you want to start right now, just pay attention to the way native English speakers use their voice and the way that they're stressing different words. Number 3 is a tricky one because I've had a few people admit this to me and they realize the gravity of what could have gone wrong. But number three is they overuse yes to cover up uncertainty because they are so afraid of not sounding fluent or they don't want to appear as less than, they sometimes just nod and say yes, like they understand what someone is saying to them in English. And obviously, especially if you work on like the clinical side of healthcare, that can cause a lot of problems. So instead of just nodding and saying yes, you understand what someone is saying to you, just acknowledge the fact that you don't understand what they're saying. And that's okay. If you need clarification on what someone's saying to you, that's all right because you're human. And sometimes we all need clarification. So instead of just nodding your head and just pretending like you're understanding what someone is saying to you, just acknowledge it. And there's a few ways that you could do this. You could say, let me repeat what you said so I make sure I understand, or let me clarify that, or just to confirm, do you mean, there's a lot of different ways you can phrase that, but just make sure that you acknowledge it. You're not going to be seen as less than or stupid because you need clarification. Number four is a big one because I've had to coach quite a few people on this, and this is being too direct without softening the tone or softening the blow. And the reason why that I'm bringing this up is because I know that it's not coming from a place of ill will or ill intention. It's a lot of the times, from my experience, it's simply a cultural difference. Perfect example, I had someone who moved from a country and moved here to the US, and they were having all kinds of problems with connecting with their patients and their staff. And it was keeping her up at night. She could not understand why she was having so many issues with her staff. And it caused her so much stress because she was like, I am here to serve. I was born to do this. And I don't know why I'm not connecting with anyone. Well, once she discovered that we use our voice for clarity, kind of like what I said before, where in her native language, and especially in her culture, what she explained to me, they do not use their voice for clarity at all. It's kind of like what you see is what you get, and this is how you say it. It's very flat, very monotone. There's really no inflections, there's nothing to their voice. So she's coming across very, very direct because that's just what she's used to. That's part of her culture. It's part of her language, the way she naturally spoke. But then when she moved here and she was speaking very, very directly, it caused a lot of problems. So anyway, if you come from a culture or a language where it's very, very direct, you might be running into some of these problems as well. Because the wrong tone, while it may not be intentional, it can make you sound very cold or very rude or like you just simply don't care. One way to fix this is just to really pay attention to how you use your voice. Like the other one, I said, pay attention to the stress. This one is really pay attention to your voice. Like I said, we can say the same sentence word for word multiple ways, and they could all have very different meanings simply because of how we use our voice. All right. And number five. Number five is speaking too fast, especially under pressure. Something that I see a lot is people speak way too fast. And some of it is due to nervousness. And some of it is because there is this myth that the faster you speak, the more fluent you sound. And that is the furthest from the truth. You actually sound less fluent when you don't speak at a normal pace. Because if you just talk, it just sounds like one giant blob of stuff and it doesn't make any sense. So one way to immediately improve not only your fluency, but your clarity is to simply slow down. Now, I know that might be hard at first, especially when you're used to just speaking a mile a minute, but I promise you, just simply slow down and people are going to be able to understand you almost immediately. And also when you speed through information like that, it also makes you seem nervous and not and less authoritative as well. And so when you slow down, it not only improves your clarity, but it also improves your impact. Because when you're just plowing through important information, it makes you seem very nervous or not as confident. But when you slow down and you have confidence behind that, you come across like you know what you're talking about. Which mistake do you feel like you use a lot? Or which mistake are you the most surprised about? Please let me know in the comments. I want to hear about them. All right, so to recap, these are the 5 mistakes that I see all the time with people in healthcare. They speak too fancy, like they speak textbook English, these big fancy $1 million words. That's not the focus. The point is to sound very clear and be very intentional with your speech. They're not really paying attention to stress, like hypertension versus hypotension. That can make all the difference. So pay attention to the way native English speakers talk, not to sound like a native, but just to pay attention and be aware of how we use our voice. When you are just nodding along and saying yes, even if you don't fully understand what someone is saying to you, it's okay to just acknowledge the fact that you don't fully understand and just ask for clarification. Sometimes people are way too direct when they're speaking. It could be a cultural difference, it could be a language difference. But if you're very mindful of the way that you use your voice and you use your tone, that alone can make all the difference when you're trying to connect with others. And then finally, if you're speaking way too fast, it does not make you sound more fluent. It actually makes you sound a lot less clear. So just simply slowing down can make all the difference, not only with your fluency, but with your clarity as well. And if you are struggling with any of these mistakes and you're ready to deal with it, we do have a free 5-day Frustrated to Fluent challenge. If you're ready to take that, the link for that is in the description box below. And if you want to keep going and you want to learn more tips on how to speak confident English in healthcare, check these videos out too. All right, that's it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Take care.